We're going back to the Duel Monsters era to take a look at another fan favorite archetype, that being Buster Blader. An archetype, a hunter-focused archetype, much like Allies of Justice and Mech Lords, the very first I should add, and they were used by both Yugi and Atem, and yeah, they are they're a pretty old archetype, and they only use 2 cards from that archetype because the others didn't exist at the time, because it wasn't turned into said archetype just yet. But yeah, it became a very, very popular archetype. It's one of my favorites as well, aesthetically. But as to what it does, I mean, I really love dragons, and Buster Bladers are made to hunt down dragons. And they're focused on this monster right here, their very first monster, the titular Buster Blader. It's a level 7 Earth monster with 2600 attack and 2300 defense, and it gains 500 attack points for each dragon-type monster your opponent controls or is in their graveyard. Now, back during this card's release, it was a pretty generic beat stick, non-archetype related, of course, which like had this boost effect, which was very, very situational, and on a good day it could rise to like 3600 and nothing else practically. But pair it up with some dragon heavy decks such as Dragoonides or even Dragon Rulers at the time, which were very, very popular, this thing became a very, very valid tech choice. And the problem was getting it to the field consistently, since there were no very special summoning methods back in the day, so you most likely had to rely on stuff like Fires of Doomsday or, I don't know, Fiend's Sanctuary to get it onto the field a bit quicker, which was not a very valid tech choice. However, Konami took inspiration from this and made it a proper archetype, and let's start with the actual support, with the first one being Buster Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman. Yes, the Destruction Swordsman is the second name of the Buster Blader archetype. Now, this is a level 1 light dragon tuner with this effect. When this card is normal summoned, you can add 1 Destruction Sword card from your deck to your hand. Just a quick heads up, that's a Buster Blader support card, of course. Except Buster Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman. You can only use one of the following effects of Buster Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman once per turn, and only once that turn. You can tribute this card, special summon 1 Buster Blader from your hand or graveyard. If this card is in your graveyard and you control Buster Blader, you can discard 1 Destruction Sword card to special summon this card. Now, this is a very, very good effect, and this is your primary playmaker, and you always run 3 of these at all times for a very good reason. First of all, you can fetch a Buster Blader from your hand or graveyard, which is not something that is necessarily hard to do, since you can Foolish it, and they even have a search card equivalent to E-Call. And since it's a level 1 Dragon Tuner, it is a very good target for cards of consonance, such as your entire spell and trap lineup, well, almost. And yeah, the Buster Blader also received a retrain, which has a name-changing effect while it is in the graveyard. So Buster Whelp is actually a very, very good card. It is summonable by 1/1, even though it does not get its normal summon effect by then. But still, it is a very nice card for a card of consonance target. So yeah, it can make a very, very easy level 8 synchro, such as Bilzay or Scrap Dragon, anything that your heart desires in your level 8 synchro variation. Alright, next up we have Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. This one is a dark monster, also a level 1 Dragon Tuner. And you can target 1 Buster Blader you control, equip this monster from your hand or your side of the field to that target. While this card is equipped to a monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. While this card is equipped to a monster, you can special summon this card and this equipped card. You can only use the effect of Dragon Buster Destruction Sword once per turn. Holy shit, this is actually a nice archetypal alternative to Vanities. Not only is it summonable by 1/1, which is a very, very valid choice to run with this thing, but you can also completely shut down the opponent's extra deck by simply equipping this to Buster Blader, which is amazing. This is not basically a 3-off staple, but you should always max out on it, because there are some other better tech choices you would want to run, but still, you want to run as many of these as possible, but don't aim it for it to be too cloggy. The Buster Whelp can easily search it out, so yes, anything is good. And yeah, it's also searchable by Wara though, so yeah, you can equip it from your hand. Alright, next up we have the first level 3 Wizard Buster Destruction Sword. This time it's a spellcaster for some reason. And you can target one Buster Blader you control, equip this monster from your hand or your side of the field to that target. While this card is equipped to a monster, monsters in your opponent's graveyard cannot activate their effects. You can send this equipped card to the graveyard and target one Destruction Sword monster in your graveyard except Wizard Destruction Sword added to your hand. And yeah, this is another very good example since it's basically a slightly weaker Necro Valley. But shutting down graveyard effects is a huge deal nowadays since most of them activate them to banish themselves from the graveyard to let you plus or even revive other cards such as Bazooki or I don't know, Destiny Hero Celestial. And yeah, this card is a perfect example of how a simple graveyard negation can prove very handy. However, it's far from a 3-off staple. It can be a little too cloggy since it's a level 3 for some reason and it's a spellcaster type monster. So running more than one is usually not advised. Next up we have the level 4 Robot Buster Destruction Sword. This one is a machine type monster. Figures. And you can target one Buster Blader you control, equip this monster from your hand or your side of the field to that target. While this card is equipped to a monster, spell or trap cards that are already face up on your opponent's side of the field cannot activate their effects. You can send this equipped card to the graveyard. The monster that was equipped with this card gains 1000 attack points until the end of this turn. Now, the negation of the spell and trap cards can be useful to negate some of the floodgates and maybe shut down a few pendulum decks. But nowadays it's not that good because floodgates are a bit too far off in between. Maybe Fiendish Chains are the only thing that can be negated, so you're most likely going to be using this for an attack boost, and Buster Bladers already have enough power boosting as it is, so run by preference if you ask me. Now their other level 4 is Skilled White Magician. It's a spellcaster again, and each time a spell card is activated, place one spell counter on this card. When the spell card resolves, max 3. You can tribute this card with 3 spell counters on it to special summon one Buster Blader from your hand, deck, or graveyard. I mean, in slower formats, this was pretty much an okay-ish effect, well, as it is now, but Buster Bladers don't have that many spell cards which they can stack up on the first turn to give you a free Buster Blader. So running this should be at 1 max. Next up we have the Retrain Buster Blader, the Destruction Swordmaster. Has the same stats as the first Buster Blader, and this card's name becomes Buster Blader while it is on the field or in the graveyard. If a monster your opponent controls is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target one of those destroyed monsters, equip it to this card. Once per turn, you can send one monster card you control that is equipped to this card to the graveyard to destroy all monsters your opponent controls with the same type as that monster sent to the graveyard. Well, this is actually, it works with the intended nature of the deck to slay dragon-type monsters, but in conjunction with DNA Surgery, it could be a very powerful card. However, I would have preferred the renaming effect to be present in the hand as well, because you could, and in the deck since their new search card cannot search this thing out. So yeah, and this is how it usually goes. You run the regular Buster Blader at 2 and this thing at 1. So yeah. And you definitely proceed to dump this thing with Foolish Burial, so you could proceed to revive it with something else. And that does it for their main deck monster lineup. And then we have their first fusion monster, Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. It requires Buster Blader and a Dragon type monster, and it must be fusion summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card cannot attack directly. This card gains 1000 attack and defense for each dragon type monster your opponent controls or is in their graveyard. Change all dragon type monsters your opponent controls to defense position. Also, dragon type monsters in your opponent's possession cannot activate their effects. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage. Holy shit, this is a prime boss monster if I ever saw one. The only bummer, of course, is that it cannot attack directly with all this power it has access to. And this is the prime reason why DNA Surgery is in this deck a 3-off staple, bar none. And yeah, this is a really insane card to have in your deck. They have an archetypal fusion spell which makes this thing eons easier to bring out, so it's a very, very great card and a very powerful one at that, and it's always a 3-off staple in any Buster Blader build. Now their other fusion is a bit of an obscure one. It's an anime card. Dark Paladin. Requires specifically Dark Magician and Buster Blader, and it must be fusion summoned, and when a spell card is activated, quick effect, you can discard one card to negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. This card must be face up on the field to activate and resolve this effect. And it has the Buster Blader effect, again, as the cherry on top. As good as this thing is, I wouldn't recommend running this because Buster Bladers do not have that much discard fodder options, and taking in Dark Magician can be a very, very Brixie experience. So yeah. Run only if you're making some sort of a Dark Magician deck with addition to Buster Bladers, but I wouldn't prefer this thing in an actual Buster Blader build. And now for their final extra deck monster, we have their Synchro monster, Buster Dragon. It's a level 8 and with 1200 attack and 2800 defense. Requires one tuner or one or more non-tuner monsters, so it's completely generic. And all monsters your opponent controls become Dragon type. Once per turn, if you do not control a Buster Blader monster, you can target one Buster Blader in your graveyard, special summon it. Once per turn during your opponent's turn, you can target one Buster Blader monster you control, equip it with one Destruction Sword monster from your graveyard. This is a quick effect. Alright, so the equip shifting effect can be very, very devastating if you have the right tools at your disposal at the time. And this is again a very, very hard 3-off staple, since in DNA Surgery, well, as good as it is, it ain't searchable. Well, this thing can actually be a very, very nice card, since you can summon a Buster Whelp and then discard one card to revive a Buster Blader you dumped with Foolish Burial, synchro up into this, then revive the Buster Blader with this. So it's a very, very formidable play, and it sets up your field for a fusion for the Buster Blader Destroyer Swordsman. So yeah, it's a very, very nice card, and it's definitely a synchro done right. Always run 3. Next up we have Emblem of the Dragon Destroyer. Add one Buster Blader from your deck or graveyard to your hand. It's as simple as it gets. Fetches only the regular one, unfortunately. But searching consistency from the deck in graveyard is miles better than any e-call spell we have today. So yeah, this is usually I prefer 2, but 3 shouldn't be a problem. So yeah. Run 2 or 3 of these always. Next up we have Destruction Swordsman Fusion. Their fusion spell, and it's a quick play. My god, I love quick plays. Fusion summon one fusion monster that lists a Buster Blader as material from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or either side of the field as fusion materials. If this card is in your graveyard, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard, add this card to your hand. You can only use each effect of Destruction Swordman Fusion once per turn. So yeah, not only is it an archetypal fusion spell, it's also an archetypal super fusion. My god, this is just pure awesomeness. But this is actually a much better archetypal super fusion, I mean super polymerization, whichever you prefer. Because this one does not have the audacity to ask you for a discard. Well, yeah, it has, and it actually has a fetching effect from the graveyard, which is just balls to the walls impressive. So yeah, you should always max out on this one. Next up we have Karma of the Destruction Swordsman, another quick play. Wow. Target up to 3 monsters with the same type in your opponent's graveyard. Banish them, and if you do, Buster Blader monster, one Buster Blader monster or one Destruction Sword monster you control gains 500 attack and defense for each of those banished monsters until the end of this turn. If this card is in your graveyard, you can discard one Destruction Sword card, add this card to your hand. You can only use each effect of Karma of the Destruction Swordsman once per turn. Another very good recycling effect and the graveyard disruption at the same time. I applaud you. And it's also a quick play spell. Could this get any better? Wow. I mean, as good as it is, it's not perfect because the monsters banished by this effect have to be of the same type, and the boost is only until the end phase. Well, obviously, which makes it worth running at 1 max. And if ever the Declaration of Rebirth continuous trap card gets printed, which I doubt it will, this will definitely be worth one more spot in the deck. Next up we have their first trap card, one of the many in fact, Destruction Sword Flash. If you control a fusion monster that lists a Buster Blader as material, banish all monsters your opponent controls. When a card you control except during the damage when a card or effect is activated that targets a Buster Blader monster you control except during the damage step, you can banish this card from your graveyard, negate the effect, and if you do, destroy this card. Judging from the fact how easy it is to summon the fusion monster, the Destroyer Swordsman to be precise, this thing never ever should be ran at any less than 3. Never. It's a very nice field clearing effect. It's a non-targeting, non-destruction removal. It banishes, and it has a very nice graveyard targeting protection effect, which is just amazing. This is one of the best trap cards I have ever seen, for one of the best archetypes I have ever seen. Next up we have Destruction Sword Memories. Discard 1 Destruction Sword card. Special summon 1 Buster Blader from your deck. You can banish this card from your graveyard to fusion summon 1 Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your graveyard. Well, it's one of their newer support cards, while Destruction Fusion again does the same thing but miles better, but still it's worth running at least 1 because it can be a very good miracle fusion. So next up we have the prologue of the Destruction Swordsman, and send 1 Destruction Sword card and 1 Buster Blader monster from your deck to the graveyard, except prologue of the Destruction Swordsman. Special summon 1 Buster Dragon from your extra deck or graveyard, but destroy it during the end phase of the next turn. You can banish this card from your graveyard. This turn Destruction Sword cards you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. You can only activate on prologue of this Destruction Swordsman once per turn. Fun fact, you can actually banish this card to protect Buster Dragon to get destroyed by this own card's effect and during the next turn, which is a very nice addition to have, since, and yeah, you're setting up your graveyard for synchro plays and fusion plays in the next turn. Since you can dump the fusion card and dump the Buster Blader, so you can revive the Buster Blader with Destruction Dragon and revive the Destruction Fusion with its effect during the next turn and proceed into this fusion monster. So yeah, not perfect, but it can be a bit too cloggy, so 2 is perfectly acceptable here. And the last trap card is Miracle Restoring. Remove 2 spell counters from your side of the field and target 1 Dark Magician or Buster Blader in your graveyard to special summon it. Now, this is a very bricky card and very inconsistent card to run in a Buster Blader deck, since the archetype does not focus on spell counters in the slightest. And you're most likely gonna run this in Dark Magician decks, and by Dark Magician deck I mean one of the many decks that focuses massively on spell counters, since this is a very inconsistent Monster Reborn card. And that does it for Buster Blader. Now it's time for the grades. Consistency. Since they have a lot of light dragon type tuner monsters, Sage with the Eyes of Blue can help out from the outside. Cards of Consonance also is a very decent draw power. Buster Whelp is actually ridiculous, they have their access to their own better graveyard related e-call. So the consistency here is a definite 3 out of 3. Power is absolutely out of the ass here because they have access to very, very ridiculous attack numbers, and thanks to their fusion monster they go over 10,000 very easily. This is definitely a 3 out of 3, one of the strongest ones I have ever put into these. Comeback ability gets a 2 out of 3 because you can sometimes not get correct top decks, and discarding cards can be sometimes very devastating and be counterproductive to your playstyle here. Protection exists in form of some trap cards, but sometimes getting to them can be a bit of a hindrance, but the protection we have now here is very, very formidable, so I'm gonna give him a 2 out of 3. Now for the versatility. Now these things are splashable in any attribute manipulation decks, so you can actually form a pretty damn versatile Red Eyes build deck with this thing. So yeah, in terms of versatility, I'll give it a very generous 3 out of 3. So Buster Blader is one of the best archetypes I've reviewed so far, and it's one of my favorites archetypes so far, and I really like to see how the support for this archetype really continues in the future. I'm feeling that this archetype has a lot of potential on its hands, and I like to see it evolve into their next format of evolution through the Link era. I'd like to see how they manage to make a Link monster for this archetype. Xyz monster, Pendulum monster, anything. Just continue making Buster Blader support. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for more video and updates. Comment, like, and subscribe. And as usual, I'll upload the next vid whenever I can. And for the next, and I won't be returning to this series for a while because what I plan to do from tomorrow on is absolutely amazing. I cannot wait for me to reveal this to you guys, and I'm just so excited. So yeah, look forward to that. See you all. Have a good day and peace.